"You two don't look like you belong in first class." Those were the first words the flight attendant said, before even asking for a ticket, before checking a passenger list, before greeting the twin girls seated quietly in row 1A and 1B. Jade and Jordan Carter, 16 years old, confident, calm, and dressed in sleek navy travel sets with matching carry-ons, barely had time to buckle their seatbelts before judgment arrived. Jade glanced up, startled but composed. Jordan stayed still, holding her water bottle mid-sip. Neither girl responded right away. They were used to stares, two young black teenagers sitting in a space typically reserved for middle-aged executives and silver-haired retirees. But this felt different. This wasn't just a look. It was an accusation. "I'm going to need you to move to the back of the plane," the flight attendant continued, already signaling to the gate staff without bothering to verify anything. Her badge read, Susan Rayner, but her expression screamed something else entirely. Other passengers shifted in their seats, sensing tension but not the full story. Some looked away. Others watched too closely. Jordan reached for her phone. She had learned the rules early. When something feels wrong, start recording. Live stream first, explain later. As Susan summoned security and insisted they were trespassing, without checking a single boarding pass, the moment began unraveling in real time. And Jordan's stream began climbing. 45 viewers, 92, 230. A few comments appeared. "Flying while black. This feels illegal. Somebody get their dad." They didn't know it yet, but that last comment would change everything. Because these weren't just two girls in first class. They were the daughters of Darius Carter, CEO of CarterTech Aeronautics, the company that powered the navigation systems for over 60% of commercial aircraft in the United States. And within the next 30 minutes, the arrogance of one employee, the silence of a few bystanders, and the power of a single phone call would bring an entire airline to its knees. And it all started with the assumption that they didn't belong. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, thick with unspoken judgments, nervous glances, and the low hum of tension that always comes when something feels off. But no one wants to be the first to admit it. Jade adjusted the strap of her crossbody bag as Susan Rayner continued to stand firm in the aisle, arms crossed, waiting for the girls to surrender their seats. Jordan kept her phone steady. The live stream ticked upward, now over 400 viewers, and rising fast. One row back, a middle-aged man in a blazer shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing at the twins, then at Susan, then back again. He wasn't sure what to say. But he wasn't the only one who noticed the awkwardness. A woman across the aisle from the girls, a mom traveling solo with her son, leaned forward, whispering, "They didn't even check their tickets?" But her voice was low, almost apologetic, like she already knew the answer. The air felt charged, as if everyone could feel a line had been crossed, but no one wanted to be the first to say it out loud. So instead, they shifted in their seats, tugged on earbuds, opened magazines they didn't read, trying to stay out of it. Trying to stay safe. Gate staff arrived, Helen McCoy, the gate supervisor, walking down the aisle with the confidence of someone used to control. She didn't make eye contact with Jade or Jordan. She didn't ask for names. She didn't ask for proof. She just asked one question. "Are these the girls?" Susan nodded. "Yes. They're in first class, but they refuse to move. I'm pretty sure their tickets are fake." Helen turned to them. "Ladies, we need you to cooperate. We're not going to ask again." Still no one asked to see the boarding passes. Jade opened her mouth to speak, but Jordan touched her arm gently. "Not yet. Not until it mattered most." Behind them, the passengers grew restless. Someone coughed. A phone camera clicked. Another woman pulled out her phone silently, just in case. Because something about this didn't sit right. The viewer count on Jordan's stream crossed 800. Comments flew across the screen. "They better check those tickets. This is racial profiling 101. Keep that camera rolling." The pressure was building. The silence was turning loud. And the moment was far from over. Jade's phone buzzed quietly in her lap. It was her dad calling for the second time. She didn't answer. She could have. She knew what he would do. One word from Darius Carter and half the country's aviation infrastructure could be frozen in place within hours. But that wasn't the first move. That wasn't how they were raised. Jade took a slow breath. They had been taught something different, something stronger. Keep calm. Speak clearly. Stand your ground. Use your words before you use your power. Jordan tapped her screen. The viewer count had crossed 1,100. People were watching from cities they had never visited, from college dorm rooms and kitchen tables and crowded subway cars. The message was spreading. But for now, they were still alone on that plane. "We're not leaving these seats," Jordan said calmly. "We have our boarding passes. We are where we're supposed to be." Susan's face tightened. "Then produce the tickets. Let's see them." Jade reached into her bag and pulled out the paper copies. She handed hers over first. The seat number, flight number, and barcode were clear, printed with sharp ink on official Skyline Airlines paper. Jordan did the same. Helen didn't take them. Instead, she crossed her arms. Those could be forged. It was a statement, not a question. No effort to check. No scan. No verification. Just suspicion disguised as protocol. "You're welcome to scan them," Jade offered, her tone professional, almost gentle. "Or check your computer system." But Helen was already speaking over her. "Security's on their way. If you're here legitimately, you can explain it to them." Jade sat back. She had offered logic, offered transparency, and now, she had offered her last ounce of patience. A few seats away, a woman in her late 60s leaned over to the aisle. "I saw them board before me," she said to no one in particular. Their names were on the screen at the gate. No one responded. Jordan looked at her sister. "We tried reason," she whispered. "We tried facts. What do we try next?" Jade looked at her phone. It buzzed again. Third call from Dad. Still, she didn't answer. Not yet. Because sometimes, the smartest move isn't using power. It's watching people reveal exactly who they are without it. And right now, the cabin was showing its true colors. The screen on Jordan's phone glowed brighter now, the comments scrolling so fast they blurred. She adjusted the angle slightly, steady hands holding the camera low but firm. This wasn't just for social media anymore. This was evidence. The live stream hit 2,000 viewers. Then 2,300. Across the country, in a newsroom in Atlanta, a junior social media producer named Tasha Delgado was monitoring trending content for her station's morning show. She scrolled past clips of cooking fails, storm warnings, and celebrity breakups, until the headline caught her eye. 2 black teens kicked out of first class. Live now. She clicked. Watched for less than 20 seconds. Then stood up so fast her chair nearly fell over. "Boss, we've got a situation on Skyline Airlines," she said, already forwarding the stream to the assignment desk. "This might be a national story." Back on the plane, Jade's eyes scanned the cabin. Some passengers still pretended not to notice. A few more had started filming on their own. That quiet, uncertain energy, the kind that comes right before something breaks, was spreading fast. Row 3, Seat C. Melissa Campbell, a law student headed to a conference in Seattle, opened Instagram. She hit record. "This is happening in front of me," she said calmly. "They're being profiled. Full stop." Within minutes, her video was reposted by 2 popular accounts, one focused on civil rights, another on youth advocacy, each with over 500,000 followers. Meanwhile, in New York, an aviation blogger known as Jet Sense reposted the livestream to his 200,000 followers on X. His caption was simple. "This is how you lose everything in under 30 minutes. Stay tuned." On Reddit, someone clipped the moment when the gate agent said, "Those could be forged." It was posted under the headline, "Skyline Airlines doubts teens' first-class tickets because they're black?" Up in the air, the captain made another announcement. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a brief delay due to a boarding verification issue. We appreciate your patience." But patience was running out. Jordan looked down. Her stream had passed 3,000. People were watching from all over. Journalists, activists, lawyers, and everyday strangers. Jade leaned closer, her voice low but clear. "This isn't just our flight anymore." And she was right. It was everyone's now. There's a moment on every flight when the cabin goes quiet, not because it's peaceful, but because something is about to erupt. This was that moment. Susan Rayner still stood in the aisle, arms folded like a final warning. Helen McCoy, the gate supervisor, stood behind her with the stiff authority of someone who had already decided what was true, even without facts. Officer Brian Hale had now boarded, his hand resting on the strap of his radio, eyes scanning the twins like a problem to be solved. Jade sat upright, her boarding pass still in hand. Jordan continued to stream, her phone glowing like a spotlight in a dark room. That's when the first voice rose. Not from the front, not from the crew, but from row 2D. "Excuse me," said a man in a crisp navy suit. His name was Gregory Banks, a frequent flyer and former civil rights attorney. "Have either of you actually checked their boarding passes?" Susan turned sharply. "Sir, please remain in your seat." He didn't. He stood. "Because I watched them board. I saw them show their tickets. And I heard you refuse to scan them." Helen stepped forward. "Sir, we're handling the situation. Please don't escalate it." Gregory didn't blink. "Ma'am, this situation escalated the moment you decided assumptions were more important than protocol." Murmurs moved through the cabin like a ripple across water. From the aisle, an elderly woman raised her voice from seat 4A. "They were polite. They've said nothing wrong. But I've heard things from your staff that are unacceptable." Jordan's phone buzzed again. The viewer count passed 5,200. Melissa, the law student from earlier, stood up too. "I'm recording everything," she said, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "And I'll be forwarding it to a legal advocacy group I work with in Seattle." More phones appeared. More heads turned. What began as quiet discomfort had turned into a rising chorus. Not shouting, not chaos, but clarity. Jade's voice was steady. "We've asked to have our tickets scanned. We're still waiting." Helen didn't answer. Officer Hale shifted his weight. Even Susan's face began to lose its edge. Truth has a way of breaking through. And in that cabin, it had just found its voice. The cabin had become a courtroom. No judge. No jury. Just facts, assumptions, and a growing number of witnesses. But the verdict wasn't up to them anymore. Jade's phone buzzed again. Same name. Same timing. Her father was calling, for the 4th time. This time, she didn't hesitate. She turned to Officer Hale. "Sir," she said calmly, "would it be all right if I answered this? It might help clarify what's happening." The officer paused, caught between protocol and the strange weight of the moment. He nodded once. "Make it quick." Jade tapped the screen. The call connected, and she immediately put it on speaker. "Jade," came the voice on the other end. Deep, clear, and composed. "Are you okay?" "Yes, Dad. We're fine. There's just some confusion over our seating." A beat of silence. "Still on Skyline Flight 237 to Seattle?" "Yes, sir. And you're in seats 1A and 1B. First class." "Yes. But the staff here believes our tickets are fake." Another pause. And then, Darius Carter's voice shifted. Not louder. Just firmer. It was the tone of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. "Could you please put me on speaker for everyone to hear?" Jade didn't need to ask why. She simply held the phone higher. "This is Darius Carter," he began. "I'm the CEO of CarterTech Aeronautics. I understand there's been an issue with my daughter's seating. Let me be very clear, those seats were purchased directly through Skyline's corporate channel, 3 weeks ago. Confirmation number CTS 4317. Paid in full on our company's account." The cabin froze. Officer Hale slowly lowered his hand from his radio. Helen's arms uncrossed, almost instinctively. Her eyes darted to Susan, then back to the phone. Susan, for the first time, said nothing. Darius continued. "I would appreciate it if someone would verify their boarding passes now, on the record, and perhaps explain why no one has done so yet." Silence. The kind of silence that says everything. Jordan looked at her sister, then at the cameras still rolling. The viewer count crossed 7,000. And for the first time, Jade smiled, not because she was winning, but because the truth was finally louder than the doubt. The moment the name Darius Carter left the speaker, something in the cabin shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was something quieter, and far more powerful. Susan's eyes darted toward Helen. Helen froze, visibly recalibrating. Officer Hale took a half step back, like someone suddenly aware he might be in the middle of something much bigger than a seating dispute. Because everyone in the aviation industry knew that name. CarterTech Aeronautics wasn't just another company, it was the digital spine of modern air travel. Their systems powered over 60% of flight navigation across North America. Their technicians serviced aircraft from Seattle to Miami. And their CEO had just entered the chat. Still on speaker, Darius continued. CarterTech is Skyline's largest external service contractor, he said, each word measured like a courtroom statement. We maintain your flight control systems, navigation diagnostics, and pre-flight inspection software across 87 airports. More phones came out. Passengers were now Googling him in real time. The headline appeared within seconds. CarterTech CEO's daughters removed from first class, live on TikTok. On the ground, newsroom phones were ringing. In corporate offices across the country, alerts were going off. In Seat 2C, a business traveler whispered to his wife via text. This just went nuclear. Darius wasn't finished. We pay Skyline Airlines over $320 million per year under our current contract. That contract includes a clause, Section 18.4.3, stating that any verified incident of discriminatory treatment toward a CarterTech executive or family member triggers an immediate contract review and may result in termination without penalty. Helen looked as if the floor had tilted beneath her. Susan's jaw clenched. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Officer Hale looked around the cabin, quietly removing his hand from his radio. Still calm, still controlled, Darius spoke once more. Someone on that aircraft needs to scan those tickets now. Because I promise you, this situation is not going away quietly. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need threats. The weight of what he represented did all the talking. And on Jordan's stream, now topping 9,000 viewers, someone typed a comment that said what everyone in the cabin was now thinking. They messed with the wrong family. While the tension continued to climb inside the cabin, a different kind of storm was already forming 1,200 miles away in a glass-walled boardroom on the 27th floor of Skyline Airlines corporate headquarters in Chicago. Inside, the morning operations meeting had just wrapped up when a frantic knock hit the door. "Ma'am," said a breathless assistant, "you need to see this now." Skyline's chief operating officer, Dana Winslow, raised an eyebrow but followed him into the adjacent media room. On the screen, a live TikTok stream played. Two black teenage girls, seated calmly in first class. A flight attendant standing over them. The comments were relentless. "Wait for it," the assistant said. "Listen." Just then, the speakerphone on the stream picked up a voice. Deep, clear, unmistakable. "This is Darius Carter." Dana didn't hear the rest. Her stomach sank. A second later, her phone buzzed. It was Skyline's legal counsel, already calling. "We've got a major exposure issue," he said flatly. "That's CarterTech. If this goes sideways, we're looking at losing our largest service contract." Dana's mind raced. She had overseen the renewal of that exact agreement just 8 months earlier. The financial implications were staggering. Termination of the CarterTech contract would not only cost Skyline over $300 million annually, it would leave more than half their aircraft grounded until new systems could be installed, approved, and tested. That would take months. Maybe longer. "Get me Captain Rivera. Now," she barked to her team. "Patch me in through the ground channel. We need to stop whatever is happening on that plane." Across the room, a younger analyst spoke up. "Ma'am, the stream is at 10,000 viewers. It's trending nationally. And we're getting tagged by media accounts." "Damage control," Dana said. "Full throttle." A crisis PR manager was pulled from vacation. IT teams were told to flag all internal emails related to the flight. Social media staff were instructed to monitor all posts with keywords like Skyline discrimination and Carter daughters. But as the corporate machine tried to contain the fire, the spark had already become a blaze. Because no matter how fast they moved behind the scenes, the story had left the building. And it was flying at 30,000 feet, live. Back in the cabin of Flight 237, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. What began as suspicion now felt like exposed failure. A failure that was being watched by over 11,000 people, live. The flight crew, once firm in their stance, now exchanged glances that spoke more of uncertainty than control. Captain Rivera stepped out from the cockpit, headset still slung around his neck. His face was tight, jaw clenched. He had just finished a direct call from corporate. The instructions were clear. He took a breath, then turned to Helen McCoy, who stood near the front galley. "Helen," he said, voice low but firm. "You were relieved from this flight. Effective, immediately." Helen blinked. "Captain, I'm just following protocol." "Not anymore," he said. "You'll be escorted off by ground staff. There's a car waiting to take you to human resources." She opened her mouth to argue but saw the captain's expression. He wasn't negotiating. Next was Susan Rayner. The flight attendant had retreated a step back from Jade and Jordan, her confidence visibly cracked. Captain Rivera didn't look at her. He simply nodded to another crew member. "Escort Ms. Rayner to the terminal. She's no longer assigned to this route." Susan's lips parted, but no words came out. She straightened her shoulders, gathered her things, and walked down the aisle in silence. Passengers followed her with their eyes but said nothing. The silence was heavier than any insult. Officer Brian Hale stood next to the twins, radio still clipped to his vest. His stance had softened, but the weight of the moment had not. Then, his radio buzzed. "Unit 7, stand down and return to checkpoint," the dispatcher said. "New directive from command. Situation is being handled by corporate." He didn't question it. He gave the girls a respectful nod and backed away slowly. Jordan's phone showed 12,000 live viewers. The comments were flooding in. "She's gone. Corporate pulling strings. This is justice in real time." Jade looked around. The cabin was quiet again, but not like before. It was a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes when people realize they just watched something shift. 2 girls. 1 voice. 1 stream. And now, 2 careers already over. The chain reaction had only just begun. By the time the plane finally left the gate, the story had already reached newsrooms, boardrooms, and living rooms across the country. CNN aired a breaking news alert within the hour. 2 black teens wrongly removed from first class. CEO dad's phone call sends shockwaves through airline industry. On MSNBC, a panel discussed the racial dynamics of air travel and the power of real-time accountability. Hashtags like #FlyingWhileBlack and #CarterDaughters trended nationwide. But what made this more than just a scandal was what happened next. Darius Carter wasn't just interested in apologies. He didn't ask for headlines. He asked for systems. For change. For action. The very next morning, he issued a public statement. "This isn't about my daughters," it began. "It's about every young person who's ever been told they don't belong because of how they look. It's about every parent who has feared letting their child travel alone. We're not calling for punishment. We're calling for progress." With that, he launched the FlyFair Initiative, a national coalition for airline equity and dignity. It included legal experts, diversity consultants, aviation executives, and civil rights advocates. Its mission was clear: no more silent incidents. Within days, 4 major airlines signed on. Training protocols were rewritten. Bias reporting apps were developed to allow real-time passenger feedback directly to executive oversight teams. FAA advisory boards began drafting new recommendations for accountability measures during boarding and in-flight service. Jordan's livestream, archived and shared across platforms, was turned into a documentary short by a civil rights media organization. Schools, universities, and training centers began using it as a teaching tool. Jade and Jordan were invited to speak at a national youth leadership conference. Their message wasn't angry. It was focused. "We didn't scream," Jade told the crowd. "We stayed calm. We didn't react with rage. We responded with record. And we let the truth speak for itself." The applause that followed wasn't just for them. It was for the shift they had helped spark. One that turned an act of discrimination into a movement for dignity. What happened on that flight wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror. And the nation had no choice but to look. 6 months had passed since the incident on Flight 237. The headlines had faded, but the impact had not. What began as a single livestream had evolved into a national blueprint for reform. The FlyFair Initiative was no longer just a campaign, it had become a movement. Skyline Airlines was the first to implement the full protocol. Every flight attendant now received monthly training on unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and de-escalation. Every passenger had access to a real-time feedback tool that alerted corporate leadership when discrimination was suspected. Other airlines followed suit. Delta, United, Southwest, JetBlue, even regional carriers. No one wanted to be next. Not after what happened. But the most powerful changes weren't on paper, they were in people. Jade and Jordan Carter didn't retreat from the spotlight. They leaned into it, with purpose. With maturity far beyond their years, they used their platform to amplify unheard voices. Together, they launched the Next Seat Project, a scholarship and mentorship program supporting Black and underrepresented youth interested in careers in aviation, engineering, and public policy. The goal was simple: to help others occupy seats they were once told they didn't belong in. By the end of those 6 months, the program had already funded 37 students across 19 states. Mentorship circles were operating in 12 high schools. One of their ments had just earned a summer internship at the FAA. The Carter family didn't stop there. CarterTech Aeronautics expanded its internal inclusion programs and began offering consulting to other aviation firms seeking to build better workplace cultures. Their core systems remained critical to flight operations, but now, their values were just as visible as their technology. At speaking events and on college panels, Jade and Jordan repeated the same message. It's not about being perfect. It's about being aware. That awareness had changed boardrooms. It had changed classrooms. And for some passengers, it had even changed the experience of stepping onto a plane. For the girls who once sat quietly in seats they were told weren't theirs, the new seat they occupied now was one of influence, of impact. And they were just getting started. It could have ended with silence. Jade and Jordan could have moved to coach that day. They could have put their phones away, accepted the injustice, and told themselves it wasn't worth the fight. That maybe this was just how things were. But they didn't. Because somewhere along the way, someone had taught them that dignity doesn't depend on where you sit. It depends on what you stand for. What happened on that flight wasn't just about first class. It wasn't just about race. It wasn't even just about airlines. It was about power. Who's allowed to speak? Who's believed? Who's given the benefit of the doubt? And who's expected to prove they belong, over and over again? The Carter twins chose to respond with clarity instead of chaos. With record instead of rage. And that decision didn't just protect them, it protected people who would come after them. People who might never know their names, but who will sit in their seats with a little more confidence, because someone before them refused to be quiet. Jade put it best during a panel at a university in Boston. We weren't brave because we fought. We were brave because we didn't back down. That's a lesson for all of us. You don't need millions of followers. You don't need a CEO for a parent. You don't even need a live stream. What you need is presence, awareness, and the courage to document what others ignore. So here's our invitation to you. If you've ever faced discrimination while traveling, or witnessed it, don't stay silent. Record responsibly. Speak calmly. Share your experience when it's safe to do so. Because your voice matters. Your presence matters. And together, our voices create pressure. Pressure builds accountability. And accountability brings change. If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it with your friends. Use it to start a conversation with your kids. Post it, comment on it, tag the people who need to see it most. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Here, we tell stories that expose injustice. Stories that show how calm, strategic resistance can change not just policy, but culture. Hit that notification bell. Because justice needs witnesses. And sometimes, the next witness is you.